Welcome back to When Gen X Ruled the Multiplex, the films that shaped the MTV generation. Today, I'm tackling Valley Girl, the 1983 teen classic that introduced the world to a little-known actor named Nicolas Cage, while capitalizing on the sizzling hot early 80s trend of Valley speak. It was written by Andrew Lane and Wayne Crawford, and was directed by Martha Coolidge, who'd go on to direct another much-loved teen 80s classic, 1985's Real Genius. In 1982, Frank Zappa and his teen daughter Moon Unit collaborated on an insanely catchy novelty hit called Valley Girl that satirized the exaggerated speech patterns and vocabulary adopted by the upper-middle-class teen girls living in Los Angeles' San Fernando Valley. The concept of Valley girls, who were generally associated with consumerism and mall culture and a very bright, cheerful, superficial lifestyle, quickly caught on with the mainstream. Hence the film Valley Girl, which boasts some sparkling performances and a legendary new wave soundtrack, which oddly does not include Frank Zappa's Valley Girl anywhere on it. Somewhere in Los Angeles' San Fernando Valley, Girls Like Me by Bonnie Hayes plays over a montage of a quartet of cute teen girls shopping up a storm at a mall. Later, they hang out at the food court, and in the shadow of Hot Dog on a Stick, they gab about their love lives. And yes, of course, they all have thick Valley Girl accents and speak in the lingo of the day, which means their speech is peppered with plenty of likes and for sure's and bitchins and grodies. Considering that the entire film is premised on a novelty song about this particular way of speaking, it's interesting that the Valley Girl accent is not exaggerated for comedic effect. It's simply presented as the way these teenagers genuinely speak. Valley Girl is essentially a comedy, but it has a healthy amount of compassion for its teen protagonists. It never presents them as objects of ridicule. Chief amongst this quartet of teens is Julie, played by Deborah Foreman, who had a robust career in the early 80s, starring in films like My Chauffeur and April Fool's Day, and also was a very popular teen model. Julie's friends include Lauren, played by Elizabeth Daily, known as the voice of Buttercup on the Powerpuff Girls and a 2013 contestant on The Voice, Stacy, played by Heidi Holliker, and Susie, played by Michelle Meyring, best known for playing hyper-smart girl Jordan in Real Genius. Julie, who is pretty and popular, is growing increasingly bored and frustrated by her relationship with her overconfident, lung-headed boyfriend Tommy, and she's looking forward to pursuing other options. So she breaks up with Tommy, played by Michael Bowen, best known as Danny Pickett on Lost. Julie and her friends hit the beach to ogle cute boys and discuss an upcoming big party at Susie's house. An opportunistic young punk rocker named Fred eavesdrops on their plan, and he and his best friend Randy decide to crash the party. Randy is played by Nicolas Cage, who was at the start of his long and fascinating acting career. He'd appeared in a small role in Fast Times at Ridgemont High the previous year, billed under his real name, Nicolas Coppola. He's Francis Ford Coppola's nephew. While his character here has a bit of punk or alternative flair, Cage is playing a pretty traditional romantic lead. He'd also play the love interest with a twist in a small handful of films made after this, including Peggy Sue Got Married and Moonstruck, and then around the time of 1988's Vampire's Kiss, in which he ate a live cockroach on screen, audiences started to realize that, hey, this guy is an interesting actor, but he's not really a traditional romantic lead, is he? Cage would spend the next 30-plus years playing an increasingly bizarre assortment of over-the-top oddballs, and bless him for that. Here in 2020, we're all so used to crazy Nick Cage that it comes as a hilarious surprise to see him getting ogled by cute girls in bikinis while he's shirtless at the beach. This is not the Nick Cage we all know. Randy's best friend Fred is played by Cameron Dye, known for The Last Starfighter, and also for an episode of Miami Vice that served as the backdoor pilot for a hilariously ill-advised spin-off series that never went into production. He played a hot young undercover cop alongside his future wife, Laura San Giacomo, in a blatant ripoff of 21 Jump Street. It was absolutely terrible, and I loved it very much. We meet Julie's supportive parents, who are a pair of laid-back hippies played by Colleen Camp and Frederick Forrest. Both Camp and Forrest were in Apocalypse Now. Camp was one of the Playboy Playmates, and Forrest, of course, was Chef. Forrest would go on to play the police captain on the first season of 21 Jump Street, which is a series in which I am shockingly well-versed. In 80s teen films, scenes with parents tend to be a drag, but they work well here. Camp and Forrest are both engaging actors, and Julie's parents are well-developed characters. They're firm believers in individuality and anti-establishmentarianism, and they try their best, with varying degrees of success, to raise their daughter with those same beliefs in an atmosphere of conformity and Reagan-era consumerism. The party at Susie's house is the centerpiece of the film, and it's by far my favorite part of Valley Girl. Not only is it a very cute and entertaining sequence, but it also features some 100% authentic 1980s teen fashions and some 100% terrible 1980s teen dancing. To this day, on the rare occasions when I'm called upon to dance, I will shift my weight from one leg to the other while awkwardly shimmying my shoulders and pumping my fists roughly in time to the music. And I learned it all from watching films like Valley Girl. Songs played at this party include Angst in My Pants by Sparks, Jukebox by The Flirts, The Fanatic by Felony, Eyes of a Stranger by Payolas, Electric Avenue by Eddie Grant, Shelley's Boyfriend by Bonnie Hayes, and Love My Way by Psychedelic Furs. There is not a bad track on that list. Just throw those songs together on a playlist and you've got the soundtrack to your next totally awesome party. At Susie's party, Susie's stepmom Beth, played by Lee Purcell, prepares big platters of sushi for the kids. In early 80s films, sushi was always used as a shortcut to indicate out-of-touch rich people. See also Molly Ringwald's lunch that she brings to high school detention in The Breakfast Club. The implication is that no one really likes sushi and that they eat it just to seem cutting edge. Which, of course, is a bunch of nonsense, but it's hard to find an 80s film in which sushi isn't used as an easy punchline. In any case, Beth and her boyfriend appear to be spreading peanut butter on sushi, which is unconventional. There's an ongoing subplot in Valley Girl in which Beth and her stepdaughter Susie both compete for the carnal affections of Susie's teenage love interest Skip, played by David Enzer. It'll eventually culminate in a scene scored to Sparks' Eaten by the Monster of Love, in which Skip sneaks into Beth's home, ostensibly to have sex with Beth, but ends up in bed with Susie. It's a subplot that doesn't quite seem to belong to the rest of the film. It seems straight out of a raunchy teen sex comedy of the Porky's or Screwballs or Private School variety, and while Valley Girl does veer into that territory, it has more in common thematically with the more serious teen-oriented romances that would come after it, like Pretty in Pink, Say Anything, and Some Kind of Wonderful. Back to Susie's party. Tommy, who is still reeling from being dumped by Julie, goes to bed with Lauren and then slut-shames her immediately afterward for being a disloyal best friend to Julie. For all boob aficionados out there, you may be interested to learn that you do indeed see Lauren's breasts, as well as the breasts of several other actresses in Valley Girl. You don't see boobs in teen films today nearly to the extent that you'd see them in the teen-driven comedies of the late 70s and early 80s, for reasons that probably have more to do with money than morality. Any film that features nudity in a sexual situation will probably get an R rating. For instance, Valley Girl is rated R. R-rated films generally open in fewer theaters and have fewer viewers, and thus a lower box office take than films rated PG. When the PG-13 rating was introduced in 1984 as a kind of midpoint between PG and R, studios viewed it as a more appealing rating for films geared towards teens, because teens could see them without needing to bring their parents. And while the content of PG-13 films can be more adult than that found in PG films, you probably aren't going to find many gratuitous pairs of boobs in a PG-13 film. Without the option of aiming for PG-13, Valley Girl embraced the R rating and included multiple sets of boobs. In fact, according to director Martha Coolidge, the distributor mandated that she include at least 4 pairs of boobs in the film. Randy and Fred crash the party. They're immediately identified as interlopers, probably because they're not wearing pastel polo shirts or Argyle sweater vests. Sparks fly between Randy and Julie, but Tommy gets territorial and beats up Randy, and with the help of his friends, throws Randy and Fred out of the party. Julie does absolutely jack all to stop him from doing this, because Julie is very sweet, but maybe a tiny bit useless. Randy sneaks back inside and hides in the bathroom until Julie comes in, and then he convinces her to run off with him. So Randy, Julie, Fred, and Stacy cruise through Hollywood while Pat Travers' I La 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 Love You plays. They hit a club. This is the Central on Sunset, which later became the Viper Room, where the Plimsolls hit the stage and play everywhere at once before launching into a million miles away. Julie and Randy start to fall in love at the club and end up staying out all night together. At school the next day, while taking driving lessons from a driver's ed teacher played by Richard Sanders, Les Nessman on WKRP in Cincinnati, Julie tells her friends about her new romance, and they're appalled that she would fall in love with someone from scary, grody Hollywood. Randy drops by the health food restaurant that Julie's parents run. They embark upon a full-fledged romance scored to Modern English's I Melt With You, which I kid you not was the theme of one of my high school dances. Julie's friends complain to Tommy about how Julie's romance with Randy means she never has time for them anymore. So during a slumber party at Susie's house, while eating Oreos and chips while bopping around in their underwear to Bonnie Hayes' Girls Like Me, Susie, Lauren, and Stacy pressure Julie to dump Randy. Julie brings their concerns to her dad. She tells him that Randy doesn't dress like her friends or talk like her friends, and her friends want her to go back to dating Tommy, but she really wants to be with Randy, and her dad is all, do whatever you like, but it sure sounds like you're happier with Randy. So in the very next scene, Julie tells her friends that she's dumped Randy. She gets back together with Tommy, even though she doesn't seem to like him very much. Now that she's officially dating Tommy again, she finally gets around to telling Randy that she's dumped him. Randy takes it poorly. He gets drunk and heads to his favorite club, where the Plimsolls are still on stage playing Oldest Story in the World. He drunkenly makes out with his ex-girlfriend Samantha, played by Tina Taberge, who, fun fact, appears on the official Valley Girl poster instead of Deborah Foreman. Randy picks a drunken fight with a guy played by Tony Plana, best known as the nice dad on Ugly Betty. Fred drags him away and yells at him to get his act together. Randy decides to fight for Julie's love. Fighting for someone's love is a popular motif in 80s teen films, and it generally takes the form of just flat-out stalking someone. And indeed, Randy pops into the back seat of a car while Julie's carpooling to school. He leaves photos of himself in her textbook. He poses as an usher when Julie and Tommy go to a movie. He poses as a car hop when Julie and Tommy go for some grub. And as the coup de grace, he camps out on Julie's lawn overnight. All of this seems to wear Julie down a bit, which I suppose means he's winning her love, but she goes to the prom with Tommy anyway. At the prom, singer Josie Cotton performs a pair of songs. School is in, and more problematically, Johnny Are You Queer, which, as the title suggests, is about a young woman wondering if her boyfriend is gay. These days, the word queer has been reclaimed by the LGBTQ community, and it's widely used without causing or intending offense. But in 1983, it was a pejorative. Invited guests at the prom include Lauren's date Arthur, played by Michael Wiley, who plays a villain in the greatest 80s film ever made, Tough Turf, and a teen named Joyce, played by Joyce Heiser, who would attain teen movie immortality in 1985 as the star of Just One of the Guys. Uninvited guests at the prom include Randy and Fred, who crash the prom. Just as Tommy and Julie are about to be proclaimed king and queen, Randy and Tommy get into a brawl, which turns into a full-scale food fight. In the middle of the chaos, Randy and Julie run off together. They steal Tommy's rented limo and drive off into the night. The film ends with them sitting next to each other in the back of the limo, looking mostly happy, but also nervous and awkward. It's a nod to the famous ending of The Graduate, which ends with Benjamin and Elaine sitting next to each other in the back of the bus after Benjamin has dragged Elaine away from the altar on her wedding day, and it's clear from their uncertain expressions that they've realized they may have made a terrible mistake. Based on everything we've seen, I don't think Valley Girl is trying to suggest that Randy and Julie think they've made a mistake, although that would be an interesting twist on the ending. I think it's meant as nothing more than a quick and meaningless homage to The Graduate. There's another one that comes earlier in the film in which Beth's attempted seduction of young Skip briefly references The Graduate's famous plastics line. Valley Girl is a charming film. When you watch it as an adult, it's breathtaking how low the stakes are. The film wrings drama out of minutia. There's not much separating Julie and Randy. They're the same age. They're both unattached. They live maybe 10 miles from each other. Julie's parents are totally cool with her dating Randy. Julie's friendships with Lauren, Susie, and Stacy suffer a bit when she starts dating Randy, but that's mostly because she's spending all of her time with her new boyfriend. They haven't shunned her. So the core conflict of Valley Girl seems like a drama-free non-issue, unless you're a teenager, especially a teenager who's grown up in safety and comfort and doesn't have a wealth of life experiences to draw upon. Valley Girl captures how these differences that are very, very small can seem monumental in the moment. Randy doesn't dress quite like Julie's friends, and they don't quite listen to the same type of music, and they don't go to the same high school, and these differences are enough to derail Julie's life. In order for Julie's problems to have any resonance, Valley Girl has to exist in a very narrow slice of the world, which is both part of its charm and part of its limitations. Everyone in the film is young and conventionally attractive, there aren't any LGBTQ characters, there are barely any non-white characters, and there are barely any examples of counterculture. Yeah, Randy and Fred are nominally punk rockers, but Randy's default outfit includes pleated front khakis. Randy shakes up Julie's world only because Julie's world is so ridiculously narrow. It's frustrating how passive Julie is. The events of the film just happen to her while she sits back and allows it. As lovely and endearing as Deborah Foreman is in the role, I wish Julie had been written with more backbone. I also wish Randy hadn't bulldozed his way back into her life at the end. I think the ending would have been stronger if Julie and Randy had seemed equally invested in getting back together. Valley Girl and Fast Times at Ridgemont High the year before it and 16 Candles the year after it form a bridge between what teen films were and what they were going to become. You can kind of think of it as the difference between teen flicks and teen films. Valley Girl has elements of a teen sex comedy, but it also takes the time and care to treat its characters as genuine human beings instead of just the setup for a raunchy punchline. The true legacy of Valley Girl, however, is its soundtrack and the way it serves as a time capsule for a particular moment in history. There's a newly released Valley Girl remake out there in the world. I haven't watched it and I don't intend to because I watched the trailer and it's clear it's not a film that's made for me. It's a film made for young people today who think the 80s are neat, and that's fine. I have no interest in the remake, but its existence doesn't have the power to damage the original in any way. The 1983 Valley Girl will endure. That's all I have to say on this one. Next time I'm going to explore the dystopian horrors of Brazil, which I expect will seem very resonant in these troubled times. Thank you very much for joining me, and I hope to meet you back here later.